Being a teacher myself, I mostly teach introductory courses in Mainz. I'm of course very curious to the subsequent talk, or for the subsequent talk, and would like to talk about a little bit about the process of taking an exam and what's behind that, and also on how to contribute questions, and which was one of those already asked. Yeah, without any further ado, let me get started. If you want to, let's say a user wants to take an examen with HPCCF, so our design is now to actually log in into a web page. Login is not right, I should rather say register, and then select the appropriate skill set to be tested for, or to be tested upon. For this is of course the test which will be generated, and then, as already mentioned, we are supposed to submit name and affiliation, which will also be in the final certificate, and then one receives an email. A mail will be sent which contains then the links and the actual keys for the examen to be taken, and this is only valid for a day, such that one has to re-register for every kind of skill set. We have a question pool which is always growing, and those questions for a particular skill set and examen are generated randomly when chosen from a pool. The pool itself will bundle a subset of the skill tree, and all examinations will be based henceforth on different sets of questions. We already briefly covered the topics of cheating. While we are confronting, of course, any prospective user with a random set of questions, such no perfect preparation can be done. There is a time limit per question, or rather per question set, and this registration prior to a test, which is required, also imposes a certain hurdle. We don't require you to, or a user to, submit ideas. Anyway, our measures will raise awareness. Of course, it's possible to cheat, but not that easily. So Julian, when he started, phrased this question, not all users have the right level of training. Yes, indeed, I can only put an emphasis on that, because I think it's a nice euphemism for what people sometimes do when they take their first, let's say, BASH or HPC introductory course using the scheduler, and then they go around, wave, I'm an expert, I know how to do things. So for PIs, I think this is also quite an interesting issue, that when there is a real examen and people can actually show that they have followed courses and actually acquired a certain set of knowledge. I'm not saying skills, because this is perhaps a little too ill-phrased here in that perspective. Then this is of course a thing which gives a little emphasis on the acquired skills in turn. So you might be wondering what's in the arsenal. If we talk about the questions, of course there are multiple choice questions, but then of course free code, or free, as you'll see, free movements on a shell and typing in code, if that is short and explicit. Any Parson problem, like rearranging pieces of code, which can also be phrased as a multiple choice question, or tracing a little bit of code and then understanding what's in there, that can also be accomplished by means of multiple choice questions. As I told you, once a user has registered, then this is an example. I just did it, I think, a day ago. Then, of course, one gets an email, and then there are, as you might see, a link to the multiple choice question part, and then a link to the scenario. The scenario is the free text or free code we have to do as a prospective user taking an exam. So multiple choice questions with regard to the skill set, basic shell scripting might look like that you have a question like which command is used to access the VI editor, then of course one can say quit or whatever. And here I deliberately made something wrong such that I have an not perfect score for testing. And then we have various kind of questions with regard to similar topics and other topics, basic shell scripting and interactive shell navigation. A scenario-based question might look like that. So you are presented with a running program and we want to send it a fixed sequence of signals to that program. That can be one kind of question, and then we are supposed to deliberately send those two signals, and on a shell, also within the scenario we created, it might look like that. We have a dummy user to be logged in. We can start this program and then we deliberately send signals. And here I also made this question on this mistake on purpose. This is not exactly the same signal, hence I don't receive a full grade. And if everything's fine, I will receive a feedback. So we are still looking for more questions, and here I just navigated to our wiki containing the skill tree and clicked on one skill set, as you can see. And here is a link down here where we can submit a proposal question for an exam to be included into an exam. That's fairly easy, and then you have a free text interface where you can paste your question into. That will be transferred into our Git eventually once we curated that very question. Sometimes there are doublets which of course don't find the way into the final exam or pools of exam question. You might wonder, there was a question whether you can do a pull request. No, the set of questions is of course not public, because otherwise any user can prepare for the specific set of questions, which is not something we'd like to endeavor. Here again, once the slides will be distributed, you'll find the link. And that very link is asking for a contract name for one of you who might want to submit a question. You can also select a learning objective or describe one, and then eventually supply the question you imagined. And eventually we'll have a evaluation process, a step of curation, as I already mentioned. After submitting the question, we have to approve that very question, because otherwise you might figure anyone can submit, or any robot can submit any bullshit, which is of course what we don't want to see. Users in turn can take multiple choice tests online at any time. The background has already been described, and all the choices are then submitted to a web server. They are all gathered, and then we have to manually, right now we have to manually approve the result. Eventually this might be automatically, and then we create a certificate and return that by email. And we try to minimize storing all personal information by discarding it and just keeping the affiliation for statistical purposes. Oh, this is an empty figure, but you've seen this figure by Julian's talk already. So eventually you get a signed certificate, and that's it. I'd like to thank you for your attention, and if there are questions, please now's the time.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. So, of course, you can ask any time, right? And I mean, given our schedule, I think we could actually hear the last talk, but I don't see.
Someone of you is typing something. If you want to turn on your mic, that's also fine.
Sebastian asks some question.
What kinds of exams? I mean, actually, eventually everything which is in the skill tree. So anything about basic shell scripting to using MPI or coding MPI, data management, anything. Yeah, anything which is in the skill tree.
Is it in one exam? Is it gathered in one exam? Because you mentioned this HPC driver license, or Julian mentioned it before, and I'm asking myself because there are things which are really HPC specific in the skill tree, and then there are basic knowledge topics, which is basic computer usage or computer science stuff, or like this. So will it be one exam covering multiple topics, or is it for each topic or subtopic of this skill tree a separate exam?
No, they will all be, so the different branches of the skill tree display a different exam eventually. And there are two aspects to the question. One is, of course, that users have to self-assess their need for certain certificates, like navigating the shell, and a computer scientist will probably never apply for that one, or then just, for instance, parallel coding. That is, of course, entirely distinct. And the other aspect is, of course, which kind of skills are required by a potential employer or PI. That is, of course, a self-assessment of this group, which has to be done. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.